In the middle of a quiet Brooklyn afternoon, an elderly woman was brutally shoved to the ground by police officers, right in front of a crowd of stunned onlookers. Her frail body hit the pavement, her walker skidding across the sidewalk as her cries for help echoed through the street. People stood frozen, unsure of what to do, until a black SUV screeched to a stop. Out stepped none other than Mike Tyson, former world heavyweight champion, and a man not known for standing idly by when injustice is happening. What seemed like a simple case of police aggression quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous, a dark conspiracy hiding behind badges, and a woman who was far more than just a helpless victim. This wasn't just about a random act of violence. This was about exposing secrets, shaking up power, and one legendary fighter stepping back into the arena, not for a title, but for truth. This is the story of how Mike Tyson didn't just throw punches, he shattered an entire system. Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happens next. It was one of those golden afternoons Brooklyn was famous for, where sunlight streamed between brownstone buildings, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, and the air smelled faintly of roasted peanuts and fresh bagels from the corner deli. On Fulton Street, life moved with its usual rhythm. Laughter from children echoed between alleyways, street vendors called out their deals on fruits and hot dogs, and car horns provided the city's natural background music. In the middle of it all, Mrs. Gertrude Miller, 82 years old and full of quiet dignity, strolled along the sidewalk with her beloved Datsun Pickles. Gertrude was a well-known figure in the neighborhood. Everyone, from the school kids to the bus drivers, knew her by name. She wore her usual faded blue coat, a wide-brimmed sun hat, and walked slowly but confidently with the help of her silver walker. Pickles, tiny but full of energy, trotted beside her like a loyal bodyguard. Gertrude wasn't just a kind neighbor, she was the unofficial grandma of the block. She brought hot soup to the homeless man on the corner every Friday, gave extra snacks to kids whose parents were late picking them up from school, and always had a story to share with anyone who needed cheering up. No one could imagine her hurting a fly. That's why what happened next shocked everyone. As Gertrude neared the corner convenience store, a small, slightly run-down place called a Tony's Market, she noticed a commotion. Two police officers stood with tense posture, facing off against a young black man wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. The young man, maybe in his 20s, looked visibly agitated, his hands raised in a show of non-aggression. "I didn't steal anything," he shouted, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You can check the cameras. I paid for that water." One of the officers, a tall man with a crew cut and mirrored sunglasses, took a threatening step closer. "Lower your voice." "Now," he said coldly. Gertrude's heart sank. She had seen situations like this spiral out of control far too often on the news. She didn't know exactly what had happened, but she could tell something wasn't right. The boy's voice wasn't defiant. It was scared. Without hesitation, Gertrude stepped forward. She raised a hand in a gentle, grandmotherly gesture. "Officers, please," she said, her voice steady but calm. "Well, I saw him come out of the store. He didn't steal anything. Maybe we can all just take a breath and..." Startled by the loud command, Gertrude froze, but before she could say another word or even take a step back, the officer shoved her roughly. The force was shocking and she stumbled, losing her grip on the walker. Time seemed to slow. The walker tipped over and Gertrude's frail body collapsed onto the concrete sidewalk. The impact was sharp and jarring, her hat flying off, Pickles yelping frantically. People nearby gasped audibly, a collective inhalation of horror. A woman screamed. A man yelled, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. The officers didn't move to help. Instead, they stepped back as if they expected the crowd to remain silent, complicit, and powerless. But something was different about this day. Something, or someone, was watching. The hum of traffic was interrupted by the roar of an engine as a sleek black SUV rolled up and screeched to a halt across the street. The tinted windows gave no clue as to who was inside. The crowd parted slightly, eyes wide, necks craning. The driver's side door opened. A large man stepped out, silhouetted by the afternoon sun. He wore a dark leather jacket, black jeans, and a focused expression that made people go silent. As he walked forward, a few in the crowd began to whisper, "Wait, is that the former heavyweight champion of the world, a living legend? And today, an unexpected witness to a gross abuse of power." Tyson didn't rush. He didn't yell. He walked calmly, like a storm building strength. His eyes locked onto the officers as he crossed the street. The air shifted. Everyone felt it, something heavy, electric. When he reached Gertrude, who was struggling to sit up with the help of a bystander, he knelt down beside her without a word. Pickles sniffed at him once, then sat silently at attention, as if even the dog knew they were now in safe hands. "You okay, ma'am?" Tyson asked, his voice low and gentle. Gertrude looked up, dazed. "I think so. Just a bit shaken." Tyson helped her up slowly, carefully, one hand supporting her elbow, the other gripping her walker and placing it back upright. The crowd watched, silent and waiting. Then he turned to the officers. "What's your badge number?" he asked coldly, staring directly at the one who pushed her. The officer stiffened. "Sir, we need you to step back." "No," Tyson cut in, his voice like thunder now. "You need to step back. You just shoved an old woman in front of 20 witnesses." The crowd erupted. Phones were up. People were shouting. The power dynamic had shifted instantly, and the officers knew it. They stepped away, radioing something into their shoulder mics, but it was too late. The video was already being uploaded, shared, and viewed across social media platforms. Mike Tyson, standing tall in the middle of the street, had just drawn a line in the sand, and Brooklyn was watching. Just 20 minutes before it all went down, Mike Tyson had been in a completely different world. Inside a Champ's Corner, a small but lively boxing gym he'd opened in Brownsville, Tyson had just finished mentoring a group of local teens. He'd watched a nervous 14-year-old named Dion land his first clean jab in the ring. That made Mike smile. He knew what it meant to be a scared kid trying to punch his way out of a broken neighborhood. He wasn't Iron Mike anymore, not like the headlines used to say. These days, he preferred being called Coach Mike, but deep inside, the fighter was still there, always had been. All it needed was the right moment. As he stepped into his SUV, intent on grabbing a smoothie and heading home, his phone buzzed. A missed call from a documentary producer. He ignored it. Then came the noise, the unmistakable sound of shouting. Not the usual city noise, but something sharper, more urgent. Tyson turned his head and saw a crowd gathering at the corner of Fulton Street. He heard someone scream. Without thinking, he made a hard turn across traffic and pulled up alongside the crowd. From inside the SUV, he saw her, a fragile old woman lying on the ground, dazed, with her walker on its side and her little dog circling nervously, and two uniformed officers standing above her, one of them with clenched fists. In an instant, the years faded. Tyson didn't see the old woman. He saw his mother. He saw injustice. He saw fear on the face of someone who didn't deserve it. He opened the door and stepped out. The crowd turned as if on cue, and whispers rippled through the air. "That's Mike Tyson. Like Tyson. Mike Tyson's here?" Tyson didn't acknowledge the crowd. He moved with purpose, walking straight to the woman. He recognized her, Mrs. Gertrude Miller. He'd seen her before, even donated to her senior center once. He'd heard she gave food to kids after school. Now she was bruised and shaking on the concrete. He knelt down beside her. "It's okay, ma'am. I got you," he said softly, offering his arm. She blinked in confusion, then nodded slowly. He lifted her gently, brushing the dust from her coat, his hands, once instruments of destruction, now steady and kind. The officers, realizing who he was, stiffened. The taller one stepped forward. "Sir, we need you to clear the area. This is a police matter." Tyson turned his head slowly and looked him in the eyes. "A police matter?" he asked, voice low but lethal. "You just shoved an old lady to the ground. Yeah. You call that police work?" She was interfering with. She was being a human being, Tyson snapped. "And you just picked the wrong sidewalk today." Silence fell. The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone shouted, "Tell him, Mike." Another yelled to get their badge numbers. The younger officer, suddenly unsure, touched his radio. "A dispatch, we've got a situation escalating." "Escalating," Tyson echoed. "You escalated it the moment you touched her." By now, several people in the crowd had their phones pointed directly at the scene. Live streams were already broadcasting on social media. Tyson wasn't trying to make a show of it. He didn't care about the cameras, but the reality was clear. The world was watching. Then came the chant. "Justice! Justice! 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 Started with one voice, then two, then the entire crowd. Justice! 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 The two officers suddenly realizing they were outnumbered and outmatched, socially, morally, and possibly legally backed away. The taller one muttered, "We'll file a report," before both turned and walked briskly toward their cruiser. Gertrude clung to Tyson's arm, her voice trembling. "Thank you, son. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," Tyson said. "You stood up for someone. That's not trouble. That's bravery." Pickles barked as if in agreement. Tyson glanced around. Something didn't sit right. He'd seen cops lose their tempers, sure, but this felt too calculated, too aggressive, almost intentional. And the way the officers had retreated without protest or apology was odd, as if they didn't want to push it yet, as if they knew something more. A woman from the crowd stepped forward. "A mister." "Tyson, I got the whole thing on video. We should report this." He nodded. "We will. But first, let's get her checked out." A nearby nurse offered to help. Gertrude insisted she was fine, just sore. But she asked if she could sit for a moment. Tyson gently guided her to a nearby bench. He sat beside her, deep in thought. That's when she said something that stopped him cold. "I've seen those two men before," she whispered. Tyson looked at her. "They weren't regular patrol officers. They came to my building last week. Said they were asking questions about an old neighbor. But they were looking at me, like they knew something." Tyson's brow furrowed. "Why would they be watching you?" Gertrude looked around cautiously before replying. "Because I used to work in intelligence. A long time ago. And I think they know who I am." Tyson leaned back, the gears turning in his head. This wasn't just about police brutality. Something deeper was hiding beneath the surface. A setup? A cover-up? A warning? Whatever it was, he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, sleep was not an option for Mike Tyson. Lying in his dimly lit bedroom, he stared at the ceiling, the image of Gertrude Miller crashing to the pavement playing on repeat in his mind. The moment had seared itself into his memory, not because of the brutality, but because of what she said afterward. "They knew who I am." Oh, those words echoed louder than any roar from his boxing days. Something didn't sit right. Cops didn't just shove elderly women for asking questions, and they didn't just walk away when caught red-handed unless they had something bigger to protect. Mike rolled out of bed, grabbed his phone, and started dialing. He wasn't a detective, but he had friends in places that mattered, places that knew how to sniff out the dirt beneath the city's clean surface. His first call was to Big Ray, a retired street cop who used to work internal affairs. They weren't best friends, but Ray respected Mike for using his fame to give back. "Mike, you calling this late? I know it ain't about boxing." Ray said, half asleep but already alert. "I need a name check. 2 NYPD officers. Fulton Street beat, late 40s. One had mirrored shades, the other was stocky and bald. Both harassed an old woman this afternoon." "You hear anything?" Ray was silent for a moment. Then he exhaled. "Oh, yeah, I heard something." "What is it?" "They're not on the active duty roster, not officially. They're in limbo, suspended pending investigation, accused of excessive force in another borough. Real nasty stuff, sealed files. Word is they're still wearing the badge, though. Someone's protecting them." Mike's pulse quickened. Not just NYPD. A private outfit that's been recruiting rogue cops, offering them fat checks and special assignments. Real under-the-table black ops style. Mike rubbed his temples. "What kind of private outfit?" Outfit. Security contractors, ex-military. Some say they're connected to corporate espionage. Others think they're working with political players. But they got reach, deep pockets, and dirty hands. Mike hung up, more disturbed than before. This wasn't just about 2 violent officers. It was about an entire shadow network operating beneath the city's nose. And then came the real twist. Gertrude Miller. She wasn't just an old lady who walked her dog and handed out cookies to neighborhood kids. No, she had once worked in U.S. intelligence during the Cold War, back in the 70s. When the game was all secrets and whispers, she wasn't just tracking down injustice. She was investigating these men. She had names, documents, patterns, evidence. And now, thanks to Tyson stepping in, the spotlight was turning toward her and him. The next morning, Tyson drove to Gertrude's building in a hoodie and sunglasses. He knocked quietly. The door opened halfway. It was Gertrude wrapped in a blanket, Pickles at her side. "You came," she said softly. "I had to. We need to talk." She let him in, locking the door behind him. The apartment was small but tidy, filled with photos of her late husband, books about history, and shelves lined with vinyl records. She moved slowly, clearly still, sore from the fall. Mike sat down at her kitchen table. "Tell me everything." Gertrude nodded, then pulled a metal tin from under a floorboard beneath the fridge. Inside were 3 flash drives, several faded manila folders, and a small, leather-bound notebook. She laid them on the table. "I started noticing patterns a few years ago," she began. "Cops who weren't listed on patrol rosters, unmarked vehicles, residents in my building disappearing after routine check-ins. At first, I thought it was just incompetence, but it wasn't." She handed Mike the notebook. Inside were pages of notes in neat cursive, license plates, badge numbers, surveillance photos, and coded references to names like Project Echo and Unit 27. "They're part of a privatized network," Gertrude continued. "Contractors hiding behind badges. They plant drugs, intimidate whistleblowers, and silence anyone who gets too close. I got wind of it through an old contact in D.C. I've been compiling proof ever since. That's why they came for me." "And now they know I'm helping you," Mike said grimly. Gertrude nodded. "Yes. You didn't just stop a beating. You disrupted an operation." Mike leaned back in his chair. He wasn't afraid, not for himself. But Gertrude was vulnerable, and now she was a target. So was anyone close to her. The city might still see him as the champ, but in this game, fists wouldn't be enough. "You gotta move," he said. "I'm not leaving this apartment," she replied firmly. "Everything I need is here." Tyson respected that, but he also knew how these people worked. They didn't give second chances. He needed to protect her and expose the truth. Fast. Maya's encrypted laptop was hit with 3 cyber attacks in a single night. A contact of Gertrude's who promised to verify the documents suddenly stopped answering calls. The clock's not just ticking," Tyson muttered. "It's rigged." Finally, the night of the event arrived. He rushed forward, not away, meeting them midair with a devastating left hook that spun one of them sideways into the rope. The second man tried to grapple him, but Tyson dropped his shoulder, flipped him to the mat, and knocked him unconscious with a jab that echoed through the stunned silence of the crowd. By now, the audience understood this wasn't part of the show. Phones came out. Cameras turned. A sea of lights flickered like stars as people began filming the chaos unfolding live. Backstage, Gertrude's fingers trembled as she held the flashlight steady while Maya frantically typed. The backup generator buzzed to life, humming like a heartbeat. The laptop flickered back on. Maya's script resumed uploading the encrypted files to mirrored servers and online media platforms. 70% complete, Maya muttered. Come on, come on, come on." They heard a commotion near the entrance. "Stay down," a voice barked. Gertrude looked up, her instincts sharpened from a lifetime in the intelligence world. "They're trying to shut us down again. We're not safe here." Just then, the screen flashed green. Upload complete, data released. On the monitors around the arena, static gave way to shocking truths. Leaked documents began auto-playing on the Jumbotron, body cam footage, payoff records, confidential memos. Faces, names, places. Real-time proof of the conspiracy they'd fought to expose. Every person in the stadium now saw what had been hidden for years, the private network of corrupt officers, their backers, their methods, and their plans to privatize the police under a brutal system of profit and control. The crowd gasped. Some wept. Others cheered. It was all out there now. Outside, the wail of sirens pierced the air. But this time, it wasn't the fake cops coming. It was real federal agents, tipped off by a whistleblower link embedded in the files Maya had uploaded. Black SUVs screeched to a halt. Armed officers in marked vests stormed the facility. The corrupt operatives tried to scatter. Some ran. Others pulled badges they no longer had the right to carry. They were tackled and arrested on the spot. Inside, Tyson stood tall in the ring as federal agents entered, recognizing him immediately. "Mr. Tyson," one said, eyes wide. "Yeah?" Mike responded, still breathing heavy. "You're clear. We've got the building secured." "You did good." Mike nodded, turning back toward the crowd who erupted into cheers. Not for a boxing win, not for a title, but for truth. The next morning, the world woke up to one of the most sensational headlines in recent history. Mike Tyson saves ex-agent grandmother from corrupt police network. Television anchors couldn't stop talking. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #GertrudeTheSpy and #IronJustice trended globally. News networks played side-by-side footage of Tyson knocking out fake cops while Maya's data stream ran live across ticker tapes. Gertrude Miller, once just a quiet elderly woman walking her dog through Brooklyn, became an overnight legend. Interviews flooded in. Former intelligence colleagues came forward. Her files were verified. Congress issued statements. She didn't seek attention, but she accepted it graciously. "I'm just glad the truth is out," she told a reporter. "And I'm proud of my granddaughter. She's got more fire than I ever did." Maya, overwhelmed but fierce, turned her experience into action. Within weeks, she launched a digital security foundation for whistleblowers and began consulting with government watchdogs. Her courage, like her grandmother's, inspired a new generation to question authority and to protect the truth. The city of New York awarded Mike Tyson a Medal of Civic Valor, the mayor personally thanking him during a televised ceremony. "You didn't have to get involved," the mayor said, "but you did. And because of that, people are safe and corruption is being rooted out." Mike smiled humbly, standing beside Gertrude and Maya. "Oh, I just couldn't stand by and watch the weak get hurt," he said. "That's never been who I am, and it never will be." In the months that followed, sweeping reforms were launched across the state. Dozens of officials and officers were indicted. Project Concord was dismantled. The private network that once operated in the shadows was fully exposed, disbanded, and banned by federal oversight. Gertrude's files were placed in the National Archives as part of a special exhibit on domestic espionage and civilian justice. And Mike Tyson? He went back to the gym, back to training kids, back to the community that loved him not just for who he had been, but who he chose to be. Still fierce, still protective, still fighting, but now in a ring that stretched far beyond ropes. And every time someone asked him why he risked his life for an old woman and her granddaughter, he gave the same answer: "Because if I didn't, who would?" In a world where most people turn a blind eye, one man, once feared in the ring, stood up for what was right. Mike Tyson didn't throw punches for fame or money that day. He fought for justice, for truth, and for an old woman who refused to be silenced. Gertrude Miller, once a forgotten figure of the past, became a symbol of courage, and their unlikely alliance exposed a hidden network of corruption. It wasn't just a rescue. It was a revolution. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable real-life and fictional tales, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. What would you have done in Mike Tyson's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Until next time, stay aware, stay brave, and never underestimate the power of doing the right thing. This is Hidden Realities. See you in the next story.